Yeah, hello. Welcome to the Anti-Social Podcast. My name is Andy, as always, and a big hello to everybody that's tuning in from near and far. I've got people from all over the world that regularly tune in to all the episodes, and lots of people across the country, and of course here in little old Sydney as well. So a big thank you so much for everybody that's been supporting the podcast, leaving comments on the episodes, rating and reviewing the podcast, blah, 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 blah. You know the drill. And a massive welcome to anybody who's listening to this for the first time. I really hope that this will be a great opening, a great introduction to whether it be podcasts in general or this particular podcast, and that you go back and have a listen to some of the other episodes, or even just subscribe to the future ones. There's heaps of people coming up in the future that'll be absolutely fantastic. I'm quite excited to have on, and you'll get to hear more of my ramblings as we move on in the future. And I'm already losing my train of thought as I'm finishing these sentences. Anyway, so this episode is David Tieck. David is an author, a writer, because they're two different things. I assume they are. Yes, they are, of course. Also a comedian, and he's just multifaceted. He just does so many different things. And I became aware of David many years ago. Well, it feels like many years ago, through his first published book, which was called Losing My Virginity 52 Times. And I bought that book in a bookstore. Actually, I'll say exactly where it was. For anybody in Sydney, you'll hopefully understand where this is. Anybody else, just ignore this part. But it was in a bookstore at Central Station underground near Railway Square, just when you're crossing through the tunnel from the station to the bus depot. So there was a little bookstore there that just had a bit of everything in there, and I just went in there to have a look at some books, and was intrigued by the title, probably thinking that there was some smutty pictures inside the book, but clearly far from that. But it's an interesting one because, as I mentioned in the episode, I was looking for guests for the podcast, and I went through my bookshelf and found this book again. And it's been quite a few years since I have read it and even thought about it. And in hindsight, it was actually quite an important book for me, because it really drilled into the fact that we all go through the same challenges all the time, and we're always reluctant to try new things, or many of us, or most of us are, out of fear of what other people think or may think. And we're worried that, we're going to be seen as not being very good at something, when, funnily enough, you always start something as not being very good. You've got to start at the start, so but these are things that stop us from doing anything in life, stop us from trying new things, talking to people, attempting a new skill, or whatever it might be. We always hold ourselves back due to all these self-defeating things that we tell ourselves. So this book really outlined for me personally that I'm not alone with those thoughts and those feelings, and that, you can walk into a room and think that everybody's looking at you, but for the most part, everybody's looking at themselves, or they're worried about what I'm thinking of them. And so we're a funny bunch of people, the way that we're always so self-conscious. And I think the more that we forget about those things or put those feelings to the side, we'll probably find that we can achieve a lot of great things and probably be happier as well. But anyway, the nutshell of this book in particular was David trying 52 things over a period of a year. So one a week, he would try something new. And some things were a bit more extreme than others, but for the most part, they're all fairly simple things, but there were things that most of us wouldn't bother trying, or we might be aware of one particular thing, or may have tried one thing, but majority of them we haven't bothered to even think about or contemplate trying. And it's just a great demonstration of what the possibilities can be. And David explains quite a bit of that in this episode of the impact that's had, and his way of thinking, and where that's taken him after the book as well, and after those experiences that he documented. Since that book, he's written a couple of other books that have been published as well. unfortunately, I haven't read them, which is very slack of me, but I will be picking them up. But we do touch on them, and David runs through what they're all about, and they sound very interesting. And I think it's all just a very fascinating thing for me, because I'm interested in writing, whether that eventuates into anything in particular later on down the track or not. I love the idea of documenting and writing things down and preserving thought in whatever way that may be. And I guess the podcast is part of that in an audible sense. But it's very interesting for me personally, and it was great to be able to talk to David and run through these things. I did find myself, and this conversation goes for a little while, and I find by the end of it, I still had a number of questions that I wanted to talk to David about. And there's a couple of things in particular that David mentioned that are lined up for him over the coming months, where it'll definitely warrant a follow-up episode. So I'll leave all that for the conversation itself. But anyway, enough of this rambling from me. I will put all the links to everything we talk about in the show notes at andysocial.net. As always, what I always say about all the guests that I have on this podcast, if you do enjoy it or you get something out of it, even the tiniest little thing that might just trigger a thought or get you thinking or get you inspired about something, please reach out to the guests themselves. I love to hear it as well, but I think it's even better when you guys send a message or an email or whatever it might be to these people that have given me and given us the time to talk about themselves and what they do and what they've been able to do over the years. And it's a great way to speak candidly with people and learn a lot more. And I really encourage people to reach out and touch base with David and all the other guys that we've had on the podcast in the past as well, and just let them know what you think. And hopefully it opens up more opportunities for all of us. The more that we talk to each other, and sometimes we might have a discussion around a certain point where an idea might spark, and somebody out there listening might have the last piece of the puzzle or something that can help that idea become reality. So a big thing that I want this to eventually be down the track is that this doesn't just become a two-way conversation with two people, that it becomes not only the conversation, but also as a result, this larger than life thing where it becomes something that falls into a community of people, and we all talk and we discuss, and if there's things that we can do and help each other out afterwards, then that's a great thing that could potentially happen. So anyway, that's the goal. We'll see where that all takes us. Anyway, blah. Please enjoy this conversation with David Tieck. Cheers.
Hello.
Hey, David.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
We made it happen.
We finally did. Effort, but
so I'll jump right into it. And I think just for anybody who doesn't know who you are, do you want to just give a brief intro of who David is?
I'm David Tieck, and I'm an author and comedian, and I'm from Sydney, Australia. Been living in LA on and off for a few years, but back in Australia now. And I'm an artist just trying to find the new thing all the time. So that's what I'm working on. Keep exploring.
So as open and as general as that, and I'll tell you what, I've only known a little bit about you just from one of your books, and it was only when I was starting to go through and find people for the podcast, I was going through my bookshelf and I found you're Losing My Virginity 52 Times. I went, oh, that guy would be interesting. And,
yeah.
And then when I looked you up again, I realized that there's a couple other books that you've written, and you've done a bunch of other things as well. So it sort of opened up a whole range of other questions that I've got along the way for you. But I guess probably just to start it in one point and just take it from there is probably that book, because that's what I know you best of.
Yeah.
And then we can sort of tap into the other books as well, because I assume that the way that they've been released is that was the first book?
That was the first book, and that was the one that changed every single part of my life.
Yeah, right. Okay. So the question that I've got for you, and I guess this will really dictate where the conversation goes, because I've just got, I was trying to think of the best way to angle this whole conversation but there's so many different things because I'm really interested in the content of the book and I guess the philosophy behind it and where. I mean, it's a few years ago that you did the book, and obviously a lot's changed since then. And I'm really keen to know what's stuck since you went through all these experiences with the book. But I'm also curious as to just how you even got started to get to the first book of getting it published and getting that out there as well. So I guess probably, so I'm not too all over the place. The book itself, in a nutshell, and I'm going to butcher this completely, is about 52 times is 52 weeks in the year, and you've gone through the process of trying new things for a period of 12 months just to get out of your comfort zone, experience life and learn and grow and whatnot, and there's a lot of things of, I guess, breaking down the barrier of fear and things that would normally hold us back that are probably just very silly and insignificant reasons, but you've decided just to throw yourself in and commit to something that's for most people is fairly significant.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. That was a very good description. That's probably better than I can come up with these days. It was like, I always have to remember where I was when I started this book because I used to be just the shyest human being that existed, like anywhere on earth. I would spend my life, I'd go to work, I'd come home, I'd watch TV, I'd go to bed, and then repeat. I got to the point, I was in my late 20s and I had no hobbies anymore. I really didn't have any passion for anything at all in life. I had no direction. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was like, there has to be more to life than this, but where do you start? You can't just pick up and say, hey, now this is my hobby. You need to kind of find stuff and try and seek out what your passions are and do that kind of stuff. So I think I was just in a mood where I was like, I need to start trying some new stuff. But then I came up with a title for the book and I was like, well, I could never come up with 52 things that I'm willing to try, but I may as well try to come up with 52 things. And I just started doing new things and I got kind of addicted to it.
It's a bit of a snowball effect.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I was like, some of the things are just, one-off day stuff, but some of them, like, I got really involved in, spent whole weeks dedicated to stuff. Like there's a week where I tried to take up surfing and I went surfing every day for a week and I was hanging around the beaches. I mean, it's not a huge commitment, but it was like, I was really giving stuff a go. And it was, I'd be looking forward to the next one and I'd be trying to figuring out what to do. And even like 10 years later now, I'm still constantly on the lookout for new stuff to try out.
I guess, well, probably just touching on the surfing thing as an example, if you just mention that in passing to most people without thinking about doing the practice of it, most people go, oh, well, what's interesting about surfing? But it's funny how, if you put most people in that situation where they're about to go, hey, you're going to try surfing for the first time, there's a lot of people out there that would just completely shy away from it and probably even get a sense of anxiety around it because it's just too far out of their comfort zone. So the big thing that I remember getting out of this book was, a lot of the things that you did weren't completely crazy and outside the box. There were just things that, most people going through their daily life of 9-to-5 jobs and being the weekend warrior and whatnot, would just never give themselves the opportunity to even think about it, let alone actually taking that first step to give it a shot. And I think that was the really cool thing that I got from it is that, there's so many things that are right at our fingertips that, that are easy to do and potentially could be life-changing as well if we just gave ourselves a bit of time to give it a shot in the first place. Yeah,
totally. And I've always been fascinated by the things that people like dedicate their lives to, like just to keep on the surfing example. I mean, people who love to surf. I mean, it's their entire lives. Their holidays are based around where the waves are, and they live by the beach, and they live with sand in their hair and all that stuff. And it's one of those things. It's like when I used to go to the beach, which wasn't very often. I'd look out and see these guys surfing. I go, how do you get into that? How do you start something like that? How do you know that you're good at it? How do you know that it's something you're going to be passionate about? And there's so many things. Everywhere you go, you look out the window anytime, there's people doing stuff that they just love. And I was like sitting around going, I don't love anything. So how, I was like, how did I miss out? Everyone else, by the time you're in your 20s, you're supposed to figure out some stuff. Like, what do I like to do? I had some stuff, but stuff had kind of fallen away. I was a big football fan for years, and my team had disappeared. And yeah, I was like, I'm just looking out the window right now, and I'm like, hey, there's cars driving by. Some people love cars. They get into them, they fix them up, and they go to conventions, and they go to races and stuff. And I'm like, that seems so freaking boring to me, but maybe I'm missing out on something. So why not explore it?
Yeah, that's it. I went through this period of roughly around the same time, maybe a couple of years earlier, where something clicked. I don't know what it was, but just suddenly I wanted to learn as much as I could. And I was horrible in high school and all through school. I hated being told what to do. I hated learning. I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that rebellious nature where when someone tells you to do something, you want to do the complete opposite. But when I was sort of towards the end of my 20s, suddenly there's something just switched in my brain. And I just went, you know what? I'll read anything and everything, and it doesn't matter what the subject is, because there'll be something in there I didn't know, and I'll learn. And whether it be useful in the short term, it might pop up somewhere in conversation down the track, because I always found, how similar to you, that I didn't have, I've got music, I guess, to an extent, but when I went out and conversed with people, especially that weren't in that same circle, I struggled. I've always struggled because there'd be nothing to talk about. And you have this this horrible small talk where you're talking about what your job is and how crap your job is, and it's just, you're trying to find some common ground. It's horrible, but the more that you sort of just dabble in other areas or start reading things, and it just opens up the conversation. And that was a massive thing for me, because I hated going out anywhere and interacting with people that weren't already in my comfort zone. And
totally. Totally. I had that for so long. And just in the course of doing this book and doing these things, if you've done something new recently, it's such a great conversation piece. It's just straight away, hey, what have you been up to? Oh, this week I went skydiving for the first time. Or this week whatever it is. And it was, you just reminded me, I'm going to praise myself briefly, but like halfway through this book, I was talking to this girl, and she goes, you know what? You're the most interesting human on earth. and it was like 6 months before, I couldn't talk to another human being I didn't know for more than 2 minutes, because you get stuck on that. How's the weather? And, oh yeah, you do that for a job, I do that for a job, and I hate my job and you hate your job. And that's the end of it. But now I had so many things to talk about, and I was like, oh, I was doing this, I was doing that, and, oh, you've done that, and, whatever. It suddenly I became a fascinating human being. It's kind of exciting.
It probably, the other thing that I found from my experience was that the more that I read and watched documentaries and just things I had no prior connection to, it almost made me feel like it encouraged me to ask questions. So instead of me sitting there and expecting somebody to talk to me, I'd start prying people to ask them what they're doing. And then if they make a mention of something, like, reversing it, and someone says that they've just been skydiving, and instead of me going, oh yeah, cool, that sounds pretty crazy, but I'd start asking questions about, what made you want to do that? And what steps did you have to go through? Do you have to go through any safety training? And you sort of just go from there. And that's what really sort of fuels a conversation. But I'd never had that beforehand if I didn't bother to pick up, or didn't have this switch in my mind where suddenly I went, oh, you know what? I'm actually interested in learning now.
Yeah. I had the exact same thing. It's something I'm still bitter about with school. School doesn't make you curious. School makes you hate learning, and you got to, here's a bunch of facts that you forget in the right order, or you don't get a pass mark. And it's like, they should be encouraging you to love learning and finding things that are interesting to you to learn about. I reckon there should be a subject at school that should just be learn something that you're interested in and write about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever it is. It could be something from another subject. It can be, hey, I personally am fascinated by the Australian cricket team. I'm going to go learn about where the captain came from and write about it. That will encourage kids to learn, and they'll go, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. They say, here's a book that you don't like. Now read it 9 times and take all the fun that you can find a way out of it.
Well, I guess that's the difference between probably learning something and just memorizing something for the sake of getting through a class or a subject or a year level or whatever it might be, where exactly what you said, you go and learn a subject, or you memorize a subject and you pass, and either if you're lucky and you have to apply it into a career that you're really interested in, but for most people you leave it at the door as soon as you walk out, and you never remember it again. That's why so many parents struggle when their kids are in school and they bring home the homework and the kid knows more than the parent.
Oh, totally. I got 3 nephews, and like they're all, my oldest one's 11, and I'm like, I could not help them with their homework.
Just going back to what you said about, looking out and watching people surf before you jumped into it. What sort of things, like, because you made a mention, you touched on it, where you sort of went through this, I guess, this internal dialogue with yourself, thinking about, how do you get to that point? What do you need to do and whatnot? But were there any sort of self-defeating sort of things that would go into your mind about, I'm not going to bother trying that because people will think I'm shit, or, I'm not going to be very good at it, so why bother? Was there anything like that you had to sort of go through?
Oh, well, I went through that my whole life until up to this point.
Yeah.
And then, I mentioned it in the intro of the book, like, as a kid, I played golf like twice, and someone said, hey, that kid's got a good swing, he should take up golf. And I was like, well, I don't want to take up golf, that's boring. So, I was just kind of like, I stayed away from even stuff that people said I was maybe talented at. And then, you get to, I remember going to the gym once in my mid-20s, before gyms were everywhere and before it was like part of the culture to go to the gym. And I was so scared that everyone's going to be watching me going, that guy doesn't know how to lift a, bench press right, and everyone's going to be laughing at me. And it's like, as if anyone, in hindsight, as if anyone cares what someone else is doing in the gym.
That's right.
They're too busy looking in the mirror themselves. From my experience. One of the great things about writing the book was, and not just doing the thing, but writing about it and putting it out into the public, is I learned that it was funnier and it was more interesting when things went wrong than it was when things went good. And it was kind of an interesting journey for me, is in the early stages, I'm like, I don't want to just be doing these things and be a big failure and have it be a big year of, then I tried this and that wasn't very fun, and I tried this and that wasn't very fun. So like the surfing one, the story, the surfing, like, I never got good at surfing, and I ended up not liking it at all, really, to be honest. Smacked my head on the surfboard 100 times, and I was in a lot of pain. Turns out surfing hurts. But the thing I remember from it, and that I tell other people about, is there was this one day where I just went to the beach by myself, and I was just like, I'm just going to keep trying until I get this right. And I went to Narrabeen or maybe DY, and I was out in the surf, and this like couple started walking along the beach, and there was like a guy with a long hair and a 6-pack, and like the surfer type of guy, and it was like this beautiful blonde girl, and she looked like the surfer babe that you see in the magazine, and they decided their afternoon of entertainment was to watch me fail and laugh at me. And I was out there, and I was feeling so humiliated, and these two are just watching me, and they're laughing their heads off, and it was like, at the time it was so humiliating, but then it's a far better story to tell that than then I tried surfing, and then I got it good, and then who cares? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's it. No one would even blink an eyelid.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of fun to fail.
Yeah. I think it'd take a lot of pressure off once you realise that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I even wrote a note in my phone just the other day. I was like, oh, that's right. It's fun to revel in your failure. It's fun to laugh at yourself when you fail. I did this experiment once a few years ago where I decided to try and celebrate literally everything that happened to me for a week. And I'd be like, it didn't matter what it was. I'd have to twist it in my mind to make it be the perfect thing that happened. And it was in Los Angeles. I was in a bar. And the first day I was doing it, this waiter was walking past carrying all his food and dropped the food on the ground. And it smacked on the ground, and there was all these like dipping sauces that just splashed all over me. And me and about 4 other people. And the 4 other people were just livid. They were angry. It was like, oh, we want to punch someone. You better give us free food, and you better pay for my dry cleaning and stuff. And I was just laughing. I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to celebrate this. This is fun. This is a new experience. I'll tell people tomorrow that I got splashed with ranch dressing. And I went home that night, and I wrote down, this is my religion now, because this is fucking fun, having fun with failure. And, it didn't stick. But maybe talking about it now will drive it back into my consciousness.
Well, it's easier said than done, but I had a similar sort of outlook years ago, and I think like you, it comes in waves, and you have a spell of it where it works really well, and you let go of it for whatever reason, get distracted by something, or something becomes too overwhelming and you forget about it. But for me, I'd get in these situations where everybody around me is uncomfortable, or it's a perfect opportunity to complain and whinge about how bad the situation is or whatnot. But all I could think in my head was, this will make an awesome story. Like right now, it's crap, but I'll be able to tell someone about how crap this is later on, but in a way that makes it exciting and different. Like I had 10 plus years ago, we were touring over in Europe and playing some shows, and we had a red-eye flight. We were in Serbia, and we had to fly out, whatever the first flight was, and we had no hotel room that night. We just decided to stuff it. As soon as we finished playing the show and we've packed up and whatnot, because it'd be pretty late, we don't want to waste money on a couple of hours in a hotel room, so we'll go straight to the airport. And so we went straight to the airport, and it was just all benches, and they're all cold. Yeah. It was in the middle of winter, and there was guys walking around with machine guns and whatnot, and the other guys, not everyone, but a few of the guys weren't terribly happy and really wanted to make a song and dance about how shit this is, and we should have got a hotel room, we could be in a bed. And I'm just lying there trying to use my backpack as a pillow, just thinking this is going to be awesome tomorrow, because I'm going to start telling everybody about how cool this night is. So I've always had that in the back of my head to try and make a story out of everything, no matter what it is or how challenged or stressed you are at the time. And sometimes it's easier said than done, because it just gets a little bit too much. But it's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, totally. I think Jim Jeffries, the comedian, I saw one of his gigs once, and he was talking about how he's basically an alcoholic and how maybe it's ruining his life. But then he goes, but I still think alcohol is great, and I'll tell you why, even though I'm struggling with it. I'll tell you why, because people who don't drink, your stories are boring. And he goes, your stories are always, and then I got home in a reasonable hour and went to bed. My stories involve waking up in places I didn't know how I got to and vomiting on stuff, and people like my stories, and I make a living telling them. So go get drunk.
It's what you make of it, isn't it?
Totally. I slept at an airport once in Prague, and me and my mate, we ended up meeting all these guys, and it turned out that the airport at Prague was full of men from, I can't remember where they're from. They're from Spain, I think, and they'd just been on a prostitute tour of Eastern Europe, and they were telling us about how great the Eastern European prostitutes were. Why would you pay $100 for a hotel when you can get 2 Latvians and 1 Lithuanian for that money?
And you wouldn't have got that having a comfortable hotel room for the night.
No, and that was, and we were at the airport because we couldn't find, we were trying to find a hostel, and they were booked out, and we had an early flight, and we said, screw it, let's go sleep at the airport. And now I know if I'm ever desperate, I can go to Latvia, and the girls are apparently cheap and excellent.
There's always something to take from every situation.
Yeah, there's a lesson to be learned. I haven't been to Latvia, and I plan on going and using that information. But
something that you wouldn't find in a Lonely Planet guide.
No, exactly.
No.
Although it's giving me an idea for a book. I'm always coming up with ideas for books. I should do I shouldn't say this too loud. My girlfriend's in the next, but prostitute tour of Europe and tell you where all the best brothels are.
It could be a bestseller.
I don't know. I think people would read it and then email me and tell me how gross I am.
Any publicity is good publicity.
Exactly.
That's right.
I get some negative feedback sometimes from losing my virginity because people think, I had one girl say to me, "I just hate your guts." And I was like, "Why? What did I do?" And she goes, "I can't believe you took advantage of all those virgins." And I was like, "Oh, I wish I could hook up with 52 virgins, but that's not the book, sorry."
It's like people on, especially Facebook, but any of the social media platforms where they read the BuzzFeed headlines. They never click on it, but they read the headline. It's usually something very controversial that has nothing to do with the content whatsoever, but they share that link without clicking on it and say how disgusting it is or how whatever their opinion is on the headline itself. That's funny.
Totally. If you read comment sections, which could either be funny or scary, it doesn't matter what the article is, there's always a bunch of crazy stuff, and there's so many people that clearly haven't read the article.
Oh yeah. If you want, if you're looking for somewhere to restore your faith in humanity, certainly don't go to areas like that on the internet because it's gonna dig a deeper hole than wherever you already are.
Oh, absolutely.
With the book itself, and I'll move on to the other two as well, because it's been quite a few years since the book's come out. Is there anything that you tried in that period of time that's stuck, or has? Because obviously the book itself has had a dramatic impact on your life, and it's led to a whole range of opportunities and things moving forward after that. But was there any of those things that you actually did over that period of time for the book that stuck, that you either continue to do, or it's because you've done it, it's led to other things?
Totally. Lots of stuff. Apart from just the constantly trying new stuff that I keep doing, but like one of the weeks I entered a painting competition. It was something, I liked to draw when I was a kid, but I never, no one tells you to keep drawing. You just kind of let it fall away. And I was like, I should paint again. And so I decided to do a painting for a local painting competition. I didn't win or anything, but as I stand right now, there's 50 paintings that I've painted right near me. That I just kept. I did quite a few artistic things, and almost all the artistic stuff stuck with me. I did early on in the book. I did a singing lesson to do karaoke for the first time. It's like so weird to think of me now because now I really like doing karaoke. But back then I was so scared, and my friends knew I was scared, and I had 13 shots of Sambuca and got booed off the stage and vomited in the sink. But yeah, I kept that. I ended up keeping up singing lessons for a year or so, and then as we speak, for some reason, music has really been pumping back into my life in the last couple of months. So that was something that kind of has really got ignited that year doing that stuff. What else? Interestingly, there was one thing that isn't in the book that I ended up chickening out of. It was the only thing I chickened out of the whole time I was doing the book, and it was an improv comedy class, and I went to do it, and I was running late, and I chickened out. I just said, screw it, I won't go, I'll chicken out. And then I eventually did it anyway, because I was going to do I was about to do my book tour, and I was like, I was so scared of doing interviews and stuff, and I was like, I'll go do that improv class, and that'll get me ready to do interviews. And then improv has just been the focus of my life ever since. So I ended up moving to New York to study it, and that's why I was in LA, and I teach it now, and I perform it whenever I can. So that one, that was the life changer. What else can I think of? When I went skydiving, I was sure I would do it as much as possible for the rest of my life. I haven't done that again yet, but I highly recommend that one.
Is it something with probably that one in particular, skydiving, where I haven't done it myself, but I can only, if I'm going to try and relate it to something, would be like going on a roller coaster, and I'm hopeless with that sort of stuff. I'm shitting myself when it comes to roller coasters or any sort of rides or anything like that. But I remember when I was a kid and get, from peer pressure or whatnot, get thrown onto a ride. But as soon as you get off the ride, it's like, yes, that's the best thing ever. Your adrenaline's pumping and you want to do it again. But with something like skydiving, and I assume it's the same sort of feeling with that adrenaline rush, but over time, because it's been so long since you've done it, would those same feelings again of, being wary and scared and whatnot creep back in? Or do you still have that feeling of, I guess, the post skydive that's still sitting there where you're not as worried about it as what you were to begin with?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, I definitely will do it again, and I definitely will be shitting myself before it happens. But there is that voice in the back of your head that goes, I've done that and I loved it. So remember that. I still have that. It's the same thing I have before I perform anything now. I have to remind myself, I'm not looking forward to this right now. I'm about to go, especially doing a stand-up gig or something that matters to me. Like, what the hell am I doing this with my life? This just sucks. I'm not in the mood to do this. This isn't fun at all. I'm scared out of my brain. And then I have to remind myself that once I do a gig and it's good and I enjoy it, at the end of it, once it's over, I'm going, why can't I do this every day of my life? Why do I have to wait? Can I do another gig right now? It's exactly that. So yeah, I think there's definitely some power in remembering that stuff. But then also, like, just doing all these things in general, it's, by the time I got to skydiving, I was like, even though I was scared, it was like, this will be another adventure and I'll be happy I did it. It wasn't, if it was just an isolated skydive, there'd be all the fear of parachutes not opening and all that stuff you probably normally have. But yeah, I don't think so. I think the more you put yourself outside your comfort zone, the more comfortable you are outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny all the reasonings and things that I think for most people, they don't even know the reasons why they don't do something because they don't give themselves enough time to think about what they actually are. Because I think if they did, they'd probably realize how silly some of the reasons are that hold them back from doing something.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are always scared of looking ignorant or looking unskilled at something. And, ironically, I miss that. I'm at the point now where I really enjoy the period where I don't know what I'm doing. That when you're naive and you're still, like, I just started playing bass guitar for the first time in my life in the last few weeks. I know you're a bass guitarist, so you'll appreciate this. I mean, I've been playing guitar my whole life, not very well, but I suddenly started playing bass, and I'm like, I'm loving the fact that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm reveling in it. I can open a book and learn something, and I'm not jaded by having tried it a million times and either figured it out or not been able to figure it out. I'm still at that. Hey, this is fun, and let's see what happens.
And I think even when you get to a point where you might be competent enough to do something, you're still always learning anyway, whether it be, to master it or to do something that you normally couldn't do. Because, I mean, shit, like with me playing, I play bass, but I'm not good at it. And, but someone else might look and go, oh, well, no, you must be all right to do it. But for me, I don't think I am. And I think the biggest joke of all time for me in my life is that I've been able to sort of mask, and put up this front that I've got some form of talent to be in a band, but I've just sort of flown under the radar and picked up a bass guitar. But it's all relative, and it depends on the circumstances. It's all subjective, but for me, there's still something there that you go, you know what? There's still an element of being naive to what you're doing, and I guess wanting to learn and learn a bit more of what you've already achieved to date, but you can continue to go. But I guess it's even better when, just to touch on what you just said, where you've got more of a clean slate, where you're really coming into it completely clean, and you've got no prior or very little prior experience in something, just to try and to see what happens and seeing those results. Because a lot of those things, and like I keep going back to, you know, the surfing example, because it's probably just the easiest thing. You know, you've come out of that week of doing surfing, and, you know, you're not a pro or anything, and you haven't enjoyed it coming out of it, but, you know, what you've been able to do from the first day to that last day, you've been able to achieve something. It might be very little, but you can see that there's been some form of improvement along the way. And I think if most people gave themselves an opportunity just to take those first few steps, then it'd probably be enough momentum to push most people forward.
Totally. I mean, any little success you have, the first time you stand up on a surfboard is such a joy, and you're just going straight, and you're on a massive surfboard that is kind of relatively easy to stand up, and you watch the pro, and it gives you appreciation for the people who do it well too. Like, I watch surfing now. I mean, I don't really watch it, but if I see on the news or whatever, when Mick Bain's getting eaten by sharks and stuff, and you see what they're doing, and it really puts it in context. It's like, holy shit, that's a skill. And I think that's a really good experience to have too, is to just, it's good to revere people. It's good to realize people have talent and not think, hey, I could do that, and not actually be able to do it.
Especially when we've got a culture, at least in Australia, where it's that tall poppy syndrome, where someone's good at something, and we like to just pay them out or put them down for various reasons. But it's just been a culture that we've developed over the decades. But it'd be amazing that if people, I guess, probably swallowed their pride a bit, and you know, took away the shield that is usually put up when you pay out on somebody else, and you appreciate and vocalize it, then you'll probably find that yourself will be more open to trying new things and improving. But it's usually, I mean, those sort of things, like you pay out on somebody else, and it's usually a great indicator of how little that they do, and you know, their reluctance to try anything new themselves. And it's more of a jealousy more so than jumping on the bandwagon of public shaming.
Oh, totally. Oh, people love to rip people down now, but we should have a rule. You're not allowed to complain about what someone else is doing unless you've tried to do it too and can do it better.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, I have a personal little rule that it really pisses me off. Like when I'm at Macca's, and there'll be like a 15-year-old serving people, and it's like an after-school job, and they're new at it, and there'll be like some douchebag complaining that there's not enough sauce on his cheeseburger or something, and you're like, do you really realize what you're doing? You're yelling at a kid who is doing something awesome and getting an after-school job and taking responsibility for their own lives and not relying on their parents and all those wonderful things, and you're yelling at them for some minor little mistake for a job that you don't want to do anyway. Like, I created a rule for myself that I won't complain about anyone doing anything unless I would rather be, if I want their job and think I could do it better, then I'm allowed to complain. and that's very rare. So, yeah, I mean, I would like to be a world-renowned best-selling author. So I will complain occasionally when there's a piece of crap writing that does very well, and that's about all I'm willing to complain about.
That's it. Well, it's a great way of looking at it. I mean, I sort of look at things where I'll weigh up and go, well, if by me complaining or making a scene about something, am I going to walk away from this situation with any benefit whatsoever? Am I going to walk away with this having a feeling of anything positive whatsoever. I mean, apart from letting off some steam, where people from a knee jerk, getting into autopilot and knee jerk reaction to a situation where you let off steam. Apart from that, what's going to happen? Is your life going to change? Is everything going to change for the better? And 99% of the time it's not. So you sort of go, you know what? I'm going to just conserve that energy, just keep it to myself and put it towards something that's a bit more purposeful, because it's just,
totally.
I mean, so many people do it all the time. I still find myself every once in a while, it's like road rage, you start yelling at somebody in another car, then you sort of stop and go, oh, hang on, they can't even hear what you're saying anyway. So what's the point?
Yeah.
Just shut the hell up. It's just, Road
rage is the big one for me. I was going to say it too, is like, you see some people just get so angry when they're driving, like, why are you trying to get into the lane I'm in? Everyone's just trying to get to where they're going. Just calm the fuck down.
And I mean, you're in Sydney as well, so I mean, we haven't got the best traffic in Sydney. And I saw the other day where we were driving past somebody, and there was a set of lights, and we're going the opposite direction, and there was a car that was stopped at the red light. I didn't see what had actually happened, but the second car that pulled up behind was a little old lady, and she got out of the car and she slammed the car door and started walking towards the front door, the front car, and gave the person the finger, and then walked back to their car. And I go, wow, that lady's got some balls. But you sort of go,
you were feeling that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Give me a viral video. But it's just, it's incredible. You sort of look and go, wow, like, what's going on in that person's life that whatever the incident was has stirred them up that much where they physically have to get out of a car and go up to somebody else. And especially somebody look, I mean, I've said this a million times in the past, where I used to always grow up thinking that somebody that older than me was wiser and more intelligent than I was. And I guess when I got into my 20s, I started to realize that wasn't always the case. It was not always the rule. But in a situation like that, you go, well, somebody who I'm assuming may have been in their 70s has seen a lot of life and has had a lot of experiences along the way. And, you'd like to think that they've had a lot of learnings and growth and whatnot. But when you see something like that, you go, what sort of life has that person had that's getting them to that point where they really need to take it to that extreme?
Yeah, I tell you what, I just thought of is if you get to that kind of age and you haven't had a lot of life experience, a lot of learning, then you've got a reason to be bitter. You probably had a shit life. I was like, you've had a shit life.
It probably helps a bit as well, being on the other end of it, where, you said like the person in McDonald's, and you're watching as somebody observing. And I've worked in customer service for years, and you see the worst in people at times, and you kind of think, well, they may be really rude to me, or you can see them being really rude to somebody, but they're more than likely going to be like that to absolutely everybody that they interact with, and that's just them. And then you sort of think, well, what sort of life have they had that's really got them to that point, or to have that attitude, whether that be right from day dot with their parents, or their friends and whatnot, or just the area that they live in, or whether it be, particular events along the way that have shaped them. And then you sort of, I think you just end up feeling sad for people, but I think it's a bit more empathetic, and I think you feel for people a bit more, instead of feeling, for me, I would always, start raging and, talking bad about somebody who's, conducting themselves in a bad manner. But then you'd sort of think, hang on, they don't even know that they're irritating you. So you're the only one that suffers by, raging about somebody else. And so it's, it's good to have a bit of awareness of the situation.
Yeah, it's always good to step back and take that overview look, and I think it's a good approach. You were saying, what do I get out of this? Because I think we waste a lot of attention on stuff that we're not going to get anything out of. There's no benefit.
Oh, and one absolutely mind spin that I got myself into a while back was, I thought, well, if I'm in a confrontation with somebody and I start yelling or abusing somebody verbally, And I think, well, those times where I've been on the receiving end of that and I copped it, and just how horrible that feels. And then you think, well, hang on,
Yeah.
if I'm doing this to somebody else, this is pretty counterproductive, because I couldn't, while I'm getting this very, very short-term pleasure of just venting and unleashing the impact that it's having on that other person, if I was on that receiving end, it would just be devastating. So that sort of put me into a bit of a spin where I think, oh, hang on, what's the purpose of me doing this? There's absolutely no purpose really at all. And it's yeah, but I mean, it's a hard thing because most people don't give themselves enough time to even think about that in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, no, totally. I just reminded me of, I used to work in accounts in the share market, and we had this technical glitch one day where some extra money got sent out to a client, and I had to ask for the money back, and it was not a pleasant experience, and it was like, and then I was like, okay, it was a technical issue, and the guy was like, well, I think we all know that when a technical issue happens, it's not the computer's fault, it's the person pressing the buttons. And I still like, oh, how dare you, it was a genuine technical issue, and you're the client, I'm not allowed to abuse you. I have to hold it in and be nice and go, yes, we're sorry for that, but it's just 15 years and I'm still
it still eats away at you. But it's funny because they're the hardest ones, especially when you're working in any sort of service industry where you have to interact with clients, and you will come across those people that are they won't yell, they won't carry on, but they're very passive aggressive, and they'll find the things to say that are really going to push your buttons. And they're the things that stick. And it's horrible. But I mean, but then going back to what I said before, the thing that sort of got me through those situations, and not every situation, but a lot of them, was they're talking to me like this, but they don't know who I am, or they don't know me that well, and they would talk in the same way to anybody that they walk or they pass in life. Whenever the situation doesn't go in their favor, they'll find a way to belittle somebody or whatnot, and that was usually not every time, but in most cases was enough just to get me past it and not cling on to something. But there's still, I'm in the same boat. There's still things years gone by where I'll see a name pop up, or even just a first name, and that'll be enough to trigger a memory of somebody who's just an absolute asshole. I hope that person's suffering.
And I'll tell you the flip side is I worked at an HMV for a while, and there was this kid that used to come in like once every 6 months, and he was blind, and he had some other, I can't remember exactly what his issues were, but he had a pretty shitty life. And he had to have a like, to come into an HMV, he had to have his mother come with him, and he was dependent on her, and I think he was probably in his early 20s, and he had a really small amount of money, and so he'd come in and he'd be like, okay, I've saved up enough money to buy a CD, and it's just pre-downloads and all this stuff where he could just get his music, and he'd come in and he'd listen to CDs, because they had the little thing where you could try out stuff, and he'd listen to 5 or 6, and he'd go, I think I want this one, and he'd buy it, and he'd love it, I assume. And one time he came in, and it was like his big moment, and he tried out a few CDs, and he's like, I want this one. So I sold it to him, went home, and then another customer came in a few hours later to use that CD machine, and I found the kid's CD. It was still in the machine. And I'd forgotten to take it out and put it in his thing, and I knew it was a big deal for him to get out of the house and to get to the shops, and I felt so guilty, and I was like ravished with guilt. I felt so bad, and I was expecting to be yelled at by his mother and stuff, and he came in to get it like a few days later, and he was so gracious. He didn't care. He was like, I was begging for forgiveness. He said, no, don't worry about it, it's just a little mistake. We all make mistakes. And I'm like, he had every reason to be pissed off at life and every reason to be pissed off at me. But he didn't. He was just, hey, what does it matter? I didn't listen to a few songs for a couple of days.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, and that's the great thing. I guess, especially if you're working, retail can be such a tough job, but if you can get a balance between both worlds, and then everything's okay. But it's those things certainly stick.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think about him too. I think about his graciousness, and it's a good lesson.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. And this might be a good segue, because I'm getting better at segues with this podcast. But with your second book, you mentioned, and I haven't read, just a heads up, I haven't read the second and third book, so you'll have to hold my hand a little bit with this one. But from what I can understand now, in order, the next one was The Embarrassing Memory Murderer. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so that one, and the reason for the segue is my understanding of what it's about is finding or going back and reflecting on memories and things that you've had in the past that really stuck and really still caused a lot of stress for yourself, and trying to find a way to, I guess, change them into probably a more positive light, or find the silver lining.
Yeah, that's exactly what the plan was. I was thinking of doing another Losing My Virginity book, and then I was all of the things I was thinking of doing seemed to be motivated by bad stuff from my life. I'd be like, oh, this horrible thing happened. It's a pretty dark book. I suffered from depression for a long time, and I won't go into all the dark stuff, but I seem to be motivated by these things. And then, well, I'll tell the story that opens the book. This will probably inspire some follow-up questions. But I got dumped halfway through losing my virginity, my actual virginity. So I was halfway through, and I needed to go to the toilet really bad. And so I went, and then when I came back out, the girl was dressed and said, "This isn't working out for me."
I'm surprised you're still with us. Far out.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
It was something that I'd never told another soul for a long, long time. And it was humiliating, and it was heartbreaking, and all those things. And I'll take this to the grave. I'll never tell another soul about this. And then I was doing an open mic stand-up comedy night one night, and it was my first time ever doing stand-up, and I was like, what can I talk about that nobody else is going to talk about? Maybe I should tell that story. And I told it, and it was the first time I'd ever said it out loud, period. I'd never told a friend. I'd never told anyone. And people found it funny, and they found me brave for saying it. And then suddenly I started telling it to a few people, and people would laugh, and not laugh at me, but laugh with me and go, oh, pat me on the back and all those types of things. And I realized that this horrible thing that had happened to me had been weighing me down for years, and I'd let that weight off. So I thought, how else can I do that? So I started to think about all the most embarrassing things that had ever happened to me, and try and figure out ways to release them from myself. The book did not turn, well, the year that I did it did not turn out to be the success that I hoped it would be. Sorry. I'm just coughing, and it's not because I'm sad, but even though I'm talking about this stuff. But yeah, I had a bad breakup when I was doing it, and I had a lot of things go wrong. I got ripped off by someone, and it ended up, I kind of think of it as my breakup album now. It's like my You Ought to Know, Alanis Morissette. There's some anger and bitterness and rage in that book, but there's lots of funny too. I had a friend that read it once that liked it, and he was showing it to a mutual friend, and he said, "I'll tell you what you do. open it at any random page, point at any random sentence, and the craziest thing you've ever heard will be there. So that's kind of what that book's about. I just poured all this anger and disappointment into it and tried to make it funny. And I don't recommend spending a year trying to think of everything that's horrible that's ever happened to you. It's not good for the psyche, but it's a fun book.
It obviously, no, I'm not going through it at the time, as you said, spending so much time, putting so much mental energy into, digging up the past and all the things that have sort of, I guess, probably would tie back into the first book where, there'd be these little self-defeating things that you'd be telling yourself that would stop you from doing things, and that would probably be, in some cases, linked back to a memory that would be influencing that. But I'm assuming that by the end of that book, once it was out there, it would have been, I assume, quite beneficial for you personally, just to, like, a bit of weight off your shoulders to be able to articulate that and put it out in written form.
Yeah, totally. There's so much stuff that's in there that I used to just, have as secrets. And, if I met someone new, especially, like someone that may potentially be someone I dated or something, I'd be like, when do I reveal all these secrets? When do you let people know about a history of mental illness or something like that? Now I can just fling them a book.
That's right. Give them the book. Just say, "I'll come back to me in a week."
Yeah, if you can handle this, then I'll be over here. If not, that was $10 for that book.
I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but with publishing, and this is a personal interest of mine, because I've really, for whatever reason, it's similar to what we were saying before, where, towards the end of my 20s, where suddenly something just clicked and I wanted to learn about anything and everything.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting to that point now, and it's only been a few years later, where I find myself writing, and I'm not a writer. I've never been good at writing. I've never kept journals or anything like that. I've attempted to write things here and there over the years. I get a brand new book, and like a exercise pad, and the first few pages, like being in primary school, where the first few pages are extremely neat and beautiful with underlines and everything. Then by the third page, it's just chicken scratch. And for me, it was always, I'd find these notepads lying around everywhere where the first 2 or 3 pages have been written, and then it's just blank after that. But I've found that I think about it a lot more, and a lot of the things that you've experienced and that you've gone through is very similar to the things that I think they're universal anyway, but they're things that really interest me. And I've always thought, it'd be great one day to be able to put this stuff in any written form, whether it be in the form of an ebook or whether it be a physical paperback or anything like that.
Yeah.
What got you to the point where, even with the first book or to continue on after that you decided that you wanted to put it into written form? Was it something that you'd always had this, not that I hate the word passion, but it's just an easy word that I always fall back onto all the time. But was it something that you always had an interest to eventually become a writer and put things out on paperback or in book form?
It's kind of strange for me, because I was not good at English in high school. I'm dyslexic, and I was always in remedial English and stuff. And I wasn't really a reader either. But I got into reading in my 20s, much like you. I started to get the passion for learning and just experiencing stuff. And it's really strange. It's, for a long time, I used to complain about what I was doing with my life. And people would say, "What would you rather be doing?" And I'd say, "I'd love to be a writer." And they would go, "Oh, I didn't know you write. What do you write?" And I go, "Oh, I don't write anything. I've never written anything." I did like creative writing as every now and then in English class. I enjoyed the process of coming up with stories. But for some reason, I just said this for years. I'd be like, "Oh, I wish I was a writer." I don't write anything. I literally didn't write a thing. And then I was listening to a lot of Jeff Buckley.
Okay.
And I really like Jeff Buckley's lyrics. And I was like really, really bored at work one day, and I was like, I've been saying for years I'd like to be a writer, and I've never tried. Maybe I'll try and write some song lyrics in the vein of Jeff Buckley. And I started writing a poem, basically, and it took me about 3 or 4 days to write 10 lines. But at the end, I felt this real sense of accomplishment, and I really liked what I'd written, and I'd really enjoyed the process of figuring out how to make things rhyme and try and say something and make it sound nice. And so I decided to start writing the second poem. And then within a year and a half, I'd written maybe 1,000 poems and 4 books. It just poured out of me. It was just, once I opened that door, I could not stop. And I basically haven't since. I write so much. And yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I barely spoke for my late teens and most of my 20s. I was so shy, I barely spoke. I think backlog of words. I just had them hiding in my brain somewhere, and I just had to pump them out. But yeah, that's what it was for me. I just started writing them, and then I started thinking about what I could do with them. I wrote a novel, and I thought, well, I'll have this published. I finished it in like April, and well, this will be out for Christmas, and then I'll be a famous novelist, and then I'll be able to quit my job and be a full-time writer. Still haven't had a novel published, but you know, that's the joy of the naive starting stage, where you think you discover something you've got some talent for potentially, and think you're good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's strange. I'm probably even surprised now that I think about it that I was willing to show my stuff to people early on. I'm probably more nervous about showing some stuff to people now than I was when I really first started, and when it was crap. Like, you look back at your first stuff and you go, well, this is awful. Why would I ever think someone would want to read this?
It's those novels that you mentioned have. I mean, how long ago was that? Was that in your late teens, early 20s that you wrote?
No,
that
yeah,
stuff?
this is my late 20s. So.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right.
Yeah.
And is that stuff that you haven't, like, you would go back to at some stage down the track and potentially publish, or?
Yeah, I kind of plan to at some point. I think I've got maybe 15 novels that I've written that are just sitting on USB drives and computers around the place. I kind of hope that at some point I'll get someone who really likes something I've done and say, what else have you got? And I can just fling them a USB and say, there's 10 million words, tell me what's good. I sometimes I think I'll go find one of my old novels and rewrite it, or write a new version of it, or I mean, some of them. I used to write novels kind of like, because I've always been influenced by music a lot, and I've always loved bands like Pink Floyd and Radiohead that, you know, mix up their sound and experiment, and I was always experimenting like that. And I kind of think of my novels as concept albums, where I would be like, I'm going to try and write a whole novel from a point of view. Like, there's one where the whole novel is someone talking into a tape recorder, and I've put in all the ums and the thinking time and the I don't know what to say stuff. Like, they're not very literary, which has always been a problem for me. I like to write from the point of view of characters that aren't English majors. They're misfits and mentally ill people and fucked up people, and I write from their point of view. So it's always been hard to hand it to an agent and say, here's a guy that can barely speak English, right? Like, it's written a novel. it's me that's written it, but it's the character's point of view.
Yeah,
So it's always been.
It reminds me of, and I only know about this author just due to Henry Rollins, but Hubert Selby Jr. and he did Requiem for a Dream. The movie.
Oh yeah.
And he was a writer for that story, but he wrote a whole bunch of other ones. And I've never read any of his books, but I only know because I just listened to a podcast with that Henry Rollins did about a year ago, and he talks about how he met this author and was a hero of his and became great friends with him. But his books were written in a similar way, where it was just very. It wasn't written in a way that was very. I'm just trying to think of the word. Like, it wasn't articulated in a way that was very refined or very in proper English or anything like that. It was written like you were speaking to somebody that was from the streets, or somebody who was and the way that we all talk to each other. And I listen back to the way that I speak to somebody, and even this conversation, I'll and I'll stutter and I'll stop mid sentence and I'll go off on a tangent, but that's the way we talk. And
I think people like that. I mean, the reason podcasts is such a great medium is I've learned I prefer to listen to a podcast. Like, I love comedy. I'd rather listen to a comedian just talk for an hour than listen to their polished hour of comedy.
That's right.
Because I like the way people talk. And you read some novels and it's like supposed to be like a drug addict who's on heroin and he's down on his luck and his life's spiral out of control, but then the language is this lyrical beauty and like,
someone with complete clarity.
Yeah, I don't buy that. I read this novel once and it pissed me off, but it changed my life as well. I read this novel and there's this I can't remember what it's called, but there's a girl in it and she's dating a writer who writes about serial killers, but the twist is that he is a serial killer and he's been killing people the whole time.
Yeah.
And then he kills people and then he writes about it. And there's this scene in the book where she's just discovered not only is who she thought was the love of her life a serial killer, but he's killed her best friend. And so she gets hit with this news, and in the book, she's like, I hit with the news, and I'm just blown away, and my head's a cloud, and I stumble into the first building I see, and it's an Irish bar. And then she goes to describe it was a mahogany wood on the bar, and behind the barman there was 3 paintings from Ireland, and one of them was of a church, and the barman had a mustache that was shaped like this and had wisps of silver. And I'm like, you've just found out the worst thing in the world. You don't remember what a fucking bar looks like.
That's right. and like, sometimes with writers, it's great when they get really descriptive like that, because you can paint a picture that you can, because you're reading words, you're not looking at pictures. But when it's a character, and it's I'm completely on your side of the fence with that. It's how can you properly relate to somebody when their inner dialogue does not match the situation or the feelings that they're meant to be having at that point in time. It just doesn't make sense whatsoever.
You just can't connect to it. It's not real. It doesn't matter. So yeah,
I have a hard enough time taking in all those details on a normal day when I'm pretty happy. Let alone distracted in negative thought.
I know. I'm like, I couldn't describe my bedroom to you right now, and I've been in it every day. I can't even remember what color the sheets are right now. That's not how we think as humans, or at least I don't. So.
No, not at all. No, not at all. So I wanted to make that, or bring up that whole subject of writing itself, because it is something that, and I've got a bad tendency of overthinking things too much and trying to find out why I'm thinking the way that I'm thinking. So I've found myself questioning why I'm finding an interest in writing, especially when I sort of feel that I don't have anything important to say, or that I'm not really writing anything. And even that self-defeating sort of inner dialogue where you go, well, don't bother starting because you're not a writer and you can't write, and what's the point? And there are other people out there that are the same age as you and they've done so much more, so you're going to be behind the eight ball straight away. But I have found, and it's more of a case of when you do write, and I assume that when it becomes something that becomes quite obsessive, you just write any time that you've got available. You just find the time to write. Whereas for me, because I have so many things that happen from the day that I wake up, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, trying to find a routine. And sometimes a routine's the worst thing that you could do as well, where I'm just trying to find or develop some habit to write. And it's like, I listen to a lot of other people, talking about their methods that they use. And some people say, just, write for 5 minutes, or write one page, or write a couple of sentences each day, and that's it. And then if you can get over that first hurdle, then you might find that you keep writing. I assume that you probably wouldn't have had a lot of those challenges because you discovered something that you were really quite interested in, and you had that, going back to that word, passion. But did you have to sort of go through that to begin with to get the ball rolling?
Even to today, I mean, it's so weird. Especially creative things. It's probably the same in every art form, but I know that I've never once sat at the computer or at the page and not been able to put something on it. It's never happened. It's not always good. It's very often not. But I know if I sit down, something will come out. However, even knowing that, it still takes me sometimes hours to talk myself into doing it. I spend so much time procrastinating when I know I want to write. I know I'm writing something I'm really enjoying writing. I know I will enjoy the writing process, and I will put it off, and I'll put it off, and I'll put it off. It's just strange the way that works. Like literally, even today, I spent like 3 hours just wandering around and going to coffee shops, and I'll go right in that coffee shop, and then I'll get a coffee, and I'll get caught on Facebook for a while. And I go, oh, that's all right. No, I'm supposed to write at home today. So I'll go home and I'll get distracted by the TV. I go, no. Sometimes going to the gym helps me start writing. So I'll go to the gym and get on the exercise bike. And but then I'll just write 2 words, and suddenly something will hit my mind, and now I've got to get it down. And once I'm in the flow, it just keeps happening. Well, I wrote one novel in 3.5 days in pretty much like 60,000 words in 3.5 days, where I basically didn't sleep or leave the computer. It just poured out of me. It was like, I just want to know what happens next, because I didn't know what happened. It's the only way to find out is to write it down.
That's cool, and I guess it goes back to everything that we've been chatting about, where it's the hardest thing is just getting started, and it's not so much because there's some sort of complex step that needs to be taken first. It's just getting through whatever procrastination that you created for yourself to get to that first step of, in this case, picking up a pen or opening up a computer or a laptop or whatever and starting to type or write. And once you get to that stage where you're physically starting to put words down, then as you said, it doesn't have to be amazing, but it's usually enough where you just the difficulty subsides, and it just comes out. Whether it be good or not, it's a completely different story. But at least the ease of it is a lot better. It's like, I guess it's like exercise and going to the gym as well. The hardest thing is just getting to the gym and starting. Once you're in there and you're moving, it's fine.
Oh,
there's
totally.
no issue. But
totally.
Yeah, so I assume that was probably it definitely was from what I was reading, that running theme with your first book, just getting over that first step, and then once you're in there, then whether you enjoy the experience at the tail end of it or not was beside the point. But once you're in it, it was a lot easier than just thinking about doing it.
Oh, totally. And I'm really in that phase myself at the moment. I mean, I've got like 10 ideas for non-fiction books that I'd like to write, and I just can't take the first step. I can't start one. Like I think I'm definitely going to do this. I'll start it tomorrow. And then I'll wake up in the morning and I'll go, oh, no, but the other idea is good too. Maybe I'll explore that one for a while. And I've been doing that for like 2 or 3 years now. But one of these days, one of them will strike me and I'll suddenly be on another adventure, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suffer from having too many ideas at the one time, which ends up meaning I do nothing.
Yeah.
I've always got an idea for something, and I may even surprise myself and write down something in my iPhone or write down on a piece of paper and go, oh, I'll come back to that one day. And if someone ever asks me what I want to do, I'll give them a list of all these great ideas that I've got, but I've never started any of them. And I go, oh, I'm never going to have enough time to start all these. But at the same time, I think, well, you know what? There's no real rush to do any of them because at this point in time, I'm not doing any. So if I just started one and focused on that for, even if you're being generous and said for the next 12 months, you focused on one idea, you're still going to achieve more than your 20 ideas that are just sitting there collecting dust at the same time. But it's a hard thing just taking that first step.
Oh, totally. I think I read this article recently. I know I read it about procrastination, and it was saying that procrastinators are, even though they can get frustrated during the procrastination period, there's part of your brain is actually solving the problems that will come up when you finally start doing it, and then you'll actually be more efficient when you actually get the job done. As long as you procrastinate for something something for weeks, and then when you finally get around to doing it, it'll be real easy. And you'll be like, why did I waste all that time procrastinating? But you actually psychologically, you couldn't have done it that quick.
You had to go through it.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the same. Like with ideas, I've got a million ideas. I always do. I can't stop coming up with ideas. But I hope some of them are fermenting in my brain. But just thinking about it out loud, I reckon even for both of us, if we started one of these ideas, I reckon the process of doing one of the ideas will also have a feed-on effect to the other ones. And it'll be like something. Well, I know this works, but I used to always write a non-fiction and a fiction at the same time, and they would feed each other. A problem solved in one would teach me how to solve a problem in the other one, or vice versa. I hit a dead end in one, but that dead end would inspire the way to knock through the dead end of the other one. I'm just thinking out loud, but this is making me realize I don't do that again. Because that's when I was at my most creative.
There you go. It's turned into a therapy session.
Yeah. Changing lives, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my humanitarian efforts. It's. I think you have to go through a set of processes or stages before you get to a moment of being productive, and I think most of the time we're not aware of what those stages are, which is why most people don't get to a point of doing anything or anything productive. And I can't remember who said it. It was somebody. It may even be. Geez, I've got 2 Henry Rollins references in the one podcast. It's pretty amazing. But I think he may have said something along the lines of the thing that fuels him to do things, whatever it might be, is just out of pure frustration. You get so frustrated with something that's usually your tipping point. You hit critical mass where that's where you're finally at a point where you make a decision to do something and you make that choice. Whereas if you're not frustrated enough, if it's not uncomfortable enough, you'll never make the effort to try something new or to follow through with an idea or anything like that. Actually, it may have even been Tony Robbins or something like that may have said it as well. But
Tony Robbins, same
yeah, that's right. Yeah. But you have to get to a point where it eats at you enough where it really causes discomfort. It just you're not happy, you're not settled, you're completely restless until you follow through with whatever it might be that's resting on your mind there. So It's
Yeah.
it is a positive thing, I guess, to be really frustrated and have a period of procrastination.
Yeah. It's very true. And now I'm just catching myself making excuses. And I'm going, yes, it's okay to procrastinate. I'm actually working. Maybe I'll procrastinate for another few months.
This never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
I'll move on to the third book because I'm conscious of time as well. But now you'll have to walk me through this third book because I've got absolutely no idea. But I was going to say that the title of this book is intriguing, but I'd be definitely using a pun there. So it's called. I'll let you actually say the title of it just to get the accent right.
Okay, it's called Okay, Intriguing, Hell Yeah, Awesomeness House.
So do you want to give me a nutshell of what it's all about?
It's very hard to explain because it's 54 essays, I think. It's covering about as big a range of topics as humanly imaginable. It's very Monty Python-esque. It's absurd. This one's not, even though it's written from the point of view of a character named David Tieck, myself, it's a non-fiction book. It's comedy, but it's very absurd. So it's a hard one to describe. But let's see if I can. I'm going to grab a copy of it. I've got a million of them around here.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
Yeah. So I mean, there's some great life lessons in this. Nearly dropped a pile of books on the ground. That was a really nice sound. So like I can teach you in this book, just to read the back of the thing. What's the coolest thing to go to jail for? Why carpet's awesome? How do you complete a sex goal? Who the king of roofs is? What the hell are the ants are up to? I teach you how to know if your cannon needs scrubbing. A lot of people don't know if their cannon needs scrubbing or not. I can teach you in this book how to tell whether or not you're a scientist. Some people don't know that you might be a scientist right now and you don't know. It's always good for someone to point that stuff out to.
So I mean, this is just a title back in. This is a book that gives people tools to get some great conversation starters.
Yeah,
this is your coffee table book.
Yeah, the way it kind of happened is I like to let bitterness drive me, and I was in a improv competition years ago, and I came up with the title Okay, Intriguing as our improv team name, and we kicked ass, but we didn't win, and so I was bitter at not winning. So then I started a whole show based on Okay, Intriguing, and ran a show for like a year. But then the show wasn't hugely successful. So then I thought I'll turn it into a book, and I keep growing this Okay, Intriguing world. But it's so every time I fail at something, I need to do it twice as hard next. But I'm intrigued by the world, and this is exploring things that intrigue me in a different way.
That's cool.
If that makes any sense.
I think so.
I like to explore, so this is a book where I've just taken a crazy concepts and then explored it and see what lessons I can get out of some crazy stuff. There's also some stuff in here about like the road rage thing we were talking about. I discovered a disease which causes half of that stuff. I can't remember what I call it. It's called something like big fat selfish asshole disease or something. That's the cause of why people are assholes in the road. Yeah.
So I mean, it's really, I guess, it's more of an interest piece for you, and actually, it'd be quite exciting in a way because you've really got free reign where you can pick whatever you want, and you're not tied into any particular topic or theme. But mind you, your other books as well, you've had a little bit of freedom, but I guess there's been a common theme across them to a degree, where this one, I guess you can go off on a whole range of different tangents, and it doesn't matter as long as there's something interesting there or something that can be learnt from it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the growth of ebooks and Kindles and things like that has gotten books to a point where, like, an indie author can get their stuff out there the way they want it to be. I think it's probably the same in music as well. It's like it used to be you have to be with a big label, and then the label tells you what you have to do, and they say, no, we don't like this direction, we want more songs like this and stuff. And now you can just do whatever the hell you want, and there's far more freedom for artists. And so my last two books, I didn't even try to make them mass marketable. I made them pure to what they were, and I always kind of consider these things like albums, and they're like, these are my concept albums. I'm gonna throw them out. I'll write some more mainstream stuff too, but at some point, I'm sure. But this is an exciting time. I hope that readers look for indie stuff more, because there's so much good indie stuff out there.
I think with the ease of the internet and just being able to find information and content and whatever, I think people are starting to get into that mentality of what we were saying before, where you get excited to learn things. And I think when people is even, and look, this might be a bit not so much shallow, but where you use the term poser, where people deliberately look for something obscure because something obscure is better than something mainstream. But but you usually find that the stuff that's not as easy to find, or is not on a bookshelf, a physical bookshelf or anything like that, there's just so much gold out there that, not because of a lack of quality content, it's more of a case of just not having money behind it, or not having the right opportunity or anything like that. And I think there's more people that are actively searching for things that aren't sitting in on the bestseller list at Dimmicks or whatever the current book retailers, whoever's left these days anyway. But
exactly.
And it's the same with music as well. I think a lot of people now gravitate towards there's websites like Bandcamp that are set up for independent artists now, and people they won't buy music anywhere else. They'll just buy music purely from Bandcamp, and they'll just keep going through recommendation after recommendation on all the pages and just keep discovering new music. And people really get off on that sort of stuff, where they can really dig deep and find the most obscure band that's creating the most amazing music. So it's cool, and I think there's more people that are more open to it now than what it's ever been in the past.
Yeah, I think so. I think the age of the, well, I know they talk about it in the TV industry, is like there'll never be another Friends or Cheers, because now there's so much content, but now there's something that they're just for you. The thing that you really want, like Friends just kind of sort of appealed to everyone, but now there'll be something that appeals specifically to what you like, and it's scary and exciting at the time. I think that the age of really unique art is upon us again. People always think back and go, I wish like every artist you meet, I'm sure you've met a million of them that say, I wish I was around in like the late 60s, when it was all new and fresh and people listened to real rock music and stuff. But I think it's going to happen again. I think we might be heading that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the best thing that I've found now, and I've only really realised it in the last several months, or had a bit more of a clarity around it, is that you don't have to. I guess it's the old stereotypes of, especially from a music point of view and performing, that you want to play on the massive stages, you want to play on the big festivals, you want to do all these things where you're on the record, you're in the record stores and whatever it might be, and worldwide fame. But you don't have to do that to be successful. And because you've got things like the internet, you can have a total niche audience where you can turn on a radio and know you'll never hear that band's music, but that band is still ultra successful because they've been able to just completely carve out a niche audience that's not a million people. It might be 10,000 people, or it might be even 1,000 people, but those 1,000 people are there no matter what, and they're always buying your product, and they're keeping artists alive. And you don't have to stress about trying to write or market something to the masses, you just go, okay, well, who's my, it goes back to, the old school marketing point of view. Who's your key demographic again? And it's not male in their mid-20s to their mid-30s that, is single and likes to drink alcohol or whatever it might be. It's more a case of this person likes this music. They're into these sort of things, and it's drilled down so much more specifically than what it was in the past, where it's a lot more generalized, because you were always, the mediums that you're projecting your content on was so vast. But now you can go, I'm looking for this particular person that likes, like for us, there's like 5 or 6 bands that I use them as the hooks to get people in. So it's like, if you like this band, then you might like us. Yeah. And so I'll just go to those bands and I'll just poach their fans, and I'll just go, I'll find them on social media and I'll hit those people up and send them links, or I'll find places where we can advertise our music where those fans are looking or where those fans interact. But I won't go in the general space where everybody else is out there trying to make noise. And I assume it's the same from an author point of view as well, where you can really sort of drill down, with the books that you've written, you go, well, I really need, like, the people that I think would find this interesting are people that are in these particular situations. And then you sort of at least have got the right avenue or the right direction to start marketing. Well, marketing sounds so wanky, but you know what I mean, like just trying to find that audience where you've got faithful people that really love what you do, and you don't have to stress about trying to make to be popular or make it big or anything like that. So it's and then anything that happens after that's just a bonus on top of it. It's I think it just takes the pressure off. But I've only sort of just come to that bit of an epiphany of a few months ago, where it's just taken the weight off. I'm like, you know what, I don't have to stress about trying to win over people that don't actually like our music. I don't have to convince them to like our music at all. Like, you either like it or you don't, and that's it. So
totally. I go on both sides of that coin. I get pissed off. Like, you want to please everyone, but that's not what art is. Art is people like what they like, and they don't like what they don't like.
And there's enough people out there that like what you like. That's the coolest thing about it. And because our only outlets for decades was whatever was on TV or whatever was in a magazine or in a newspaper or whatever it was, you would assume that that's what everybody else liked. So if you liked something that wasn't in there, then you sort of felt like a bit of an outcast, or you weren't. There was hardly anybody else out there that liked the same things. But now, because of the internet, if you've got some weird, crazy fetish where you like buying used socks from women or something like that, you'll find thousands of people out there that love the same thing. So you can have the craziest interest, and you'll find a community of people, and you'll make money off it if you're that way inclined, and you want to produce something. There'll be enough people out there, no matter what, that'll love what you do. It's just, that's the best thing. That's just taken all the panic out of everything that I try and do anyway. That there's no matter what, there's going to be enough people out there that will keep you going. Oh, I surprise myself sometimes. I'll wrap it up in a sec because I'm just looking at the time. But I think we'll have to do a round 2 sometime down the track, because there's heaps of other things I've got written here, and you've made a few comments along the way, which I could probably spend ages asking you and drilling questions, especially about you going overseas and all the improv stuff and whatnot. But maybe just to touch on a little bit of that, I guess where you're at now, and you're doing a lot of writing and whatnot. From the comedy side of things, are you doing much stand-up? Are you doing much improv or anything like that at the moment? Or what's the next 6 or 12 months look like for you? Do you have things coming up?
Yeah, I do. I co-run a comedy room in Parramatta every Monday night called Crown Comedy. It's just an open mic. Anyone can come and do anything they want there. I do lots of weird comedic experiments there. And then there's an improv school in Sydney called Laugh Masters Academy that's doing some really amazing stuff, and I'm teaching and coaching with those guys a bit and doing some shows with them. And then I've just started getting into clowning, which
Right.
is there's a guy called Gaulier who was Sacha Baron Cohen's
Yep.
teacher, and I'm going to go study with him for a month in July in Paris.
Wow.
So that's going to be exciting. That's it's literally the art of being an idiot. So,
but it's a very specific art from what I've read or heard about. It's it seems to be quite exclusive, sort of. Well, I'm just trying to think of the word to use. Not an academy, but like, you know, from a training point of view, to go to was it like a clown college?
Yeah, it's the Gaulier School. Some people do 2 years of full-time clown teaching, but they teach. It's an acting school.
Yep.
At the core, they teach Shakespeare and Chekhov and classics and stuff.
Wow.
As well. But it's all about. From my understanding, I'm just learning about this stuff now. This is my new thing. But along with bass guitar, clowning and bass, they go hand in hand.
There's a combo there.
Yeah. but the great thing about clowning is it's not about learning a specific skill. There's a bunch of skills you learn, but it's about finding what works for you. And they talk about finding your clown, and your clown will be very different from someone else's clown and someone else's clown. So some people's clown will be a very physical, more like what we think of classically as a clown with a red nose and big pants and stuff. But some people's clown will be very verbal and even very intelligent, like Sacha Baron Cohen's clowns, people like Borat, and they're idiots, but it's also very intelligent. And yeah, I'm curious to know what my clown will become. I'm going to let the master extract that from me, but it's the art of idiocy, and being an idiot is fun.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's yeah, wow. Okay, that's that'll definitely be a follow up sometime after you've gone through all that, because that sounds.
Yeah, when I get back, it's something I've been realizing as well, because I've been really getting into music again recently and clowning, and I realized so many rock stars are clowns. I mean, like, not just that they're drunk and fall down a lot, but rock stars have this, or just musicians in general have this agreement with the audience that they're allowed to wear stupid clothes and they're allowed to speak in third person and call themselves gods and stuff, and we let them get away with it because they're rock stars. So, but that's a clown, and it's great, and there's such a freedom in being able to do that stuff.
It's almost developing a persona, because you find that with a lot of, and I think that's with any artist out there, you use your creativity to, in some ways, put a bit of a mask over who you are. And when you're a musician, just from the people that I've met over the years, and even myself, you get on stage and you play, and you almost become somebody different, and you lose the inhibition, like where the reluctance to stand, like when someone talks about public speaking and people physically get sick for standing in front of people, and it'd be like what you said before when you first tried karaoke, and you're worried about being judged, and you're worried about people looking at you, what they're thinking. But it gets to a point where when you're a performer, you might still have all those anxieties, but when you get on stage, you're not that same person anymore. You're not who you are. You become this larger than life character on stage, and some people do that with through their music, or some people do it aesthetically through makeup and clothes and whatnot. And it's what gets people through. And you find that there's a lot of musicians out there that suffer big time with their own, their own inner demons, and they're always self-conscious and worried about what people think. But on stage, they're just a completely different persona. Then they protrude this confidence, and everybody wants to be them, and they become this role model and this person of influence, and it's fantastic. But if you catch them when they're not in that setting, they're a completely different person, and it's very unique. It's amazing that people can get themselves into a state like that. And it's not always a negative thing. It can be quite a positive thing where it's a great outlet to let go and not have to worry about something for a little while, where you can really get on stage and enjoy yourself no matter what it might be. But I certainly find that the first show I ever did, I rubbed deep heat into my legs to stop my legs from wobbling on stage because I was so nervous. But I'll get on stage now and just act like an absolute idiot and, you know, crack jokes and dance around on stage like I'm a fool. But it's not me. It doesn't feel like me, but I'm having a great time and people are laughing and enjoying it, and it's fantastic, and it just doesn't matter. And then when you get off stage, and if you're in a similar situation in another setting, you won't see me do that at all. I'll be extremely quiet and reserved. So it's it's interesting.
Yeah, no, totally. I was even like I was watching, I was listening to some of your music, and then I listened to your podcast. And I was like, oh, I was not expecting. That's not the person that I thought was making that music.
Yeah,
but
it's what you create, isn't it? And you can have all different facets of who you are and what you do. And I guess that's probably the great thing about being a writer as well, is that you can, especially with your novels and whatnot, that you can really escape and move away from yourself and create things with no limitations whatsoever. And you can go off into dreamland and create something on your own terms.
Totally. And it affects me too. Like I wrote a novel from the point of view of someone who was really self-confident, and I started getting more confident writing from their point of view.
Yeah.
It was just my nature. I mean, I've written a lot of fucked up people, and I mean, it can really affect my mental health if I write someone who's really struggling with life. It's something I'm conscious of. Is sometimes if my mood isn't good for a while, if my mental health isn't good for a while, I go, okay, I better write something from the point of view of someone who's in a better place than me, and that person can drag me into a good place. I mean, it's something really powerful. You know, have you ever heard of laugh yoga?
No, I haven't.
Laugh yoga, my girlfriend is a practitioner.
Right.
Laugh yoga is something they invented where they found out, you know, when you laugh, there's all these endorphins and stuff that affect your body, and it makes you feel better in general. And someone discovered that even if you just pretend to laugh, it works. And then they discovered if you just pretend to laugh for a while, you end up just laughing anyway. And so there's these people that go around and teach classes where people just go in and laugh for half an hour, and it doesn't matter what's going on, you just laugh, and you just make yourself laugh. And even if it's just completely fake, it ends up becoming real because it's such a stupid thing to do. But the process of doing it still really is beneficial to your body and makes you feel better. So, I mean, that's the power of that stuff.
Wow. So she's a practitioner. So she goes around and holds classes for this?
Well, she's not at the moment, but I need to talk to her more about this. But she did a course on how to run workshops, and she had a laugh mentor that used to call her up every morning, and they'd do the exercises together. She'd go, "Well, are you ready to laugh with me?" And
wow.
She'll start teaching some classes in that around Sydney at some point. So any Sydney listeners, keep your eyes on the internet. There'll be some laugh yoga opportunities coming up.
That's incredible. That's really cool. All right. Well, that might even influence another podcast down the track once it's all up and running. That just sounds it sounds bizarre, but it makes sense. It there's definitely some logic behind it. But totally. very very outside the box. Especially doing morning exercises over the phone. That sounds if you're in the room listening to somebody on the phone going through laughing exercises, it's
yeah
pretty unique.
I think so. I'll have to get her to start working on it more so I can vicariously live it.
Sounds good. Well, I'll wrap it up now just to let you go because we've been going for ages and longer than I actually thought you'd be able to hang around
Yep.
for. So thanks so much. That's
no
awesome.
worries. It's been great. Yeah, this is definitely the longest interview of my life. So here's a virginity for me. I've had fun.
Oh, awesome. And I'm going to put for everybody that's keen to learn more, I'll put all the links up to your pages. So hopefully get a few more fans.
Fantastic. I need him.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, and we'll keep in touch and see how you go with Clown School.
Awesome, man. Thanks. Great talking to you, and good luck with everything. And I'll come check out a gig one of these days, hopefully. So
sounds good.
We can meet in person.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Take care. Thanks, everyone, guys and gals. Hope you enjoyed that episode with David. All the links to everything we discussed, including grabbing his books, will be on andysocial.net. Just click on this episode and everything will be listed there for you to check out at your convenience. Otherwise, David is on Facebook. You can search for his name, David, and surname Tieck, Tieck. He's got a couple of pages there, so you can find him, and all the links will be based off those pages as well, if you're that way inclined. As I said in the intro, strongly encourage you to reach out to David, let him know what you thought of the episode. I'd love for you guys to do that with every guest that I have on, just to let them know. I think it's the least that I can do for them to dedicate their time for us, and by bringing their talents and their skills and their achievements to more people, and hopefully that we can help each other. So yeah, we'll do a follow-up with David at some stage down the track, especially after he's been to Clown School. I think that could be a podcast in itself, or funnily enough, it might even be a book. So we'll see where that all goes. But very cool and a really inspiring guy, as I've made a mention in the intro. Just somebody that has really sparked something with me over the last few years, and just a particular way of thinking which has been quite beneficial for me. And I really need to pick up his two other books, but also go back to that first book, Losing My Virginity 52 Times. I highly recommend giving it a shot. It's a very easy read. It's quite entertaining. It's quite comical, and there's just a great philosophy behind it, and I think everyone will benefit from giving it a quick read. Anyway, enough of all that and me going off on tangents as I do. Some final housekeeping. You can find the podcast, depending on where you're listening to it, because there's a multitude of ways, via iTunes, Omni, Stitcher, RSS, YouTube. You can find all the episodes via those platforms. If you want to share the podcast around, for especially somebody who doesn't know what a podcast is, definitely use the YouTube link. So that's youtube.com/c/Andy Dowling, or you can just type in the Andy Social Podcast into the search field and the episodes will pop up there. It's a great way to get the podcast out to more people, because more people are familiar with YouTube than some of the other platforms. And I really encourage you guys to leave comments on those videos. No one's doing it, but I still encourage you to do it either way. Even if you just want to heckle me or hurl some abuse, definitely do so. I think it'll help me get a bit more exposure on YouTube anyway. It's all for selfish reasons, of course. Finally, May 28th. I don't even know when this episode's going to come out, but it's very, very soon. I might have to be a little bit conscious of that. But May 28th will be my podcast party, aka the Andy Social. Very informal get-together at the Fun Room at Frankie's Pizza by the Slice in Sydney CBD. Jordan McDonald, who was on the podcast episode 32, for your reference, has been very generous to let me use the room. So I'm going to be hosting just a little bit of a drink session there. Very, very informal. He's going to give me the Fun Room for a few hours before they open up to the public, so we can go in there and just have some drinks. Just a purely excuse to have some drinks and just talk a bit of shit for a few hours. So there's no event, there's no particular agenda whatsoever. I might bring a few things along or something to make it a little bit special. But even if I don't, just come along and we'll have some fun. Whether there's 2 people, whether there's 5 people, whether there's 20 people, whether there's 50 or 100, doesn't matter. I'm going to have a great time, and I hope that some of you guys can come along, and we'll. It'd be great even just to get some feedback from you guys and just get an understanding of even some ideas and some suggestions in the future of maybe people that I can have on, or even when I start ranting and raving about building this utopian community around this podcast, you might have some ideas or feedback on those crazy ideas myself. Even it might even be an opportunity just to tell me to shut up. But anyway, that'll be Saturday, May 28th from 6 p.m. at the Fun Room, which is inside Frankie's Pizza by the Slice at Sydney's in Sydney CBD. And you can find all the information via Google. I'm not advertising this anywhere. It's only via these episodes. You can invite people along. It's open invitation, but I'm not going to do a Facebook invite or any of that sort of rubbish out there. So it's for you guys. It's just a great excuse to do a bit of a catch up and hopefully make it a regular thing as well over time. That's about it. Lots of episodes coming up. There's lots of ideas that I've got, which is quite funny considering the conversation I just had with David about a million ideas, not starting any of them. I'm kind of in that period at the moment. But a lot of cool things coming up, a lot of cool guests, lots of people that I've got penciled in. I've got these lists and lists of people and trying to find time to catch up with people. Everyone's either very busy or we've got time zones to try and negotiate around and whatnot. But it's cool. It's exciting. And I'm glad you guys are coming along for the ride. So anyway, enough of all this rambling and raving. Thank you so much, and we'll speak soon. See you guys.